Thanks for joining me on episode 367 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Matt Woodrum, podcaster and father in training. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talents, and your treasures, having the calling to face your demons and struggle to become a great father for your children. And one way to be inspired to do this is to listen to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend Scott Maynard.
If you give to others because you want others to be influenced by you and follow you, that's manipulation. And that's not a loving spirit. But if you give to others without the expectation of it coming back to you and without the expectation of influence and building relationships, but instead just with the idea that you are giving because others need this from you.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's Spiritual Foundation episode about developing your influence, I talk with you about filling your own cup so it can flow to others, why this expression of faith is the fullness of love, and how to recognize if you are emptying or filling your cup. There's this beautiful ceremony called the Havdalah ceremony, I think I'm pronouncing that right, in Jewish culture, that involves, as the work week is beginning, as the Sabbath is ending, they take a cup and while reciting a prayer about prosperity and about things coming to them, wealth and good fortune coming to them in the week, they fill a cup with wine. And that cup is sitting in a deep saucer. And they pour the wine while reciting the prayer until that wine overflows the cup and begins to fill the saucer. That mental image of as you're getting ready for the week, you begin to pray for prosperity, you pray for things to come your way, you pray for goodness and wealth and all of these other things is something that I think we've gotten away from a lot of times in the Christian culture. In the Christian culture, there's this mindset that your cup should be very, very small. You should want very little, you should need very little, and everything else should go out into the world as service. It should be given freely to others. And that's not completely false. But then there are other people who have this view of their cup as extremely large. Their cup is all of their needs and all of their wants and everything they could ever want. And despite making a very good income, they end up living paycheck to paycheck because they're constantly striving after keeping up with the Joneses and having more than they really need. And nothing flows from their cup and goes into the saucer. And clearly that's also an extreme and very bad. And I would argue that for most of us, the truth should lie somewhere between those two extremes. Your cup needs to be large enough that you have provided for yourself and your family and provided for them in a way that is more than just austerity. The truth is in American culture, we look at sometimes the things that we consider just the bare minimum. But if you travel overseas and you see other cultures and other parts of the world, you begin to realize that a lot of what we consider the bare minimum is actually extremely wealthy. And when you start to recognize that, you start to realize that a lot of stuff that you think you need is actually just a want. And you might be able to live without it. In fact, you certainly can. But filling your own cup, providing for yourself, providing for your family is biblical, and it is something that you need to do. And out of that comes abundance. And out of that abundance, it flows out of the cup and into the saucer. That's to remind you that generosity is part of this faith journey as well, that giving to others and serving others well and pouring out into others is part of what we are supposed to do as a Christian. This expression of filling your own cup shows the love that we are supposed to have for ourselves. We are supposed to provide for ourselves and our family. We are supposed to, as God has created, we are to be creators. As God has provided, we are to be providers. These sorts of expressions of love are part of the fullness of God's love. But as well, we are expected to fill our cup and then turn and let out of that abundance, let things flow. Out of that, make sacrificial gifts. Out of that, give sometimes in a way that shows our faith, because maybe we don't see right away how that giving actually will work. And yet we give anyway, and we give freely, and we give with a generous spirit and an open spirit, and we give with a heart of generosity, not a heart of manipulation. And out of that is a full expression of love. But the truth is, all too often, I think sometimes the biggest challenge we have is around that idea of the size of the cup. Often we empty our own cup prematurely. We drain all of our own resources. We no longer can provide for our family because either we've failed to set good boundaries and we allow things to come from our cup freely in a way that isn't healthy. In other words, our cup is leaky. Or sometimes we have the bad relationship and we're filling our cup, but our cup is too large. Our cup has all of our wants, all of our needs, everything that we ever wanted. And so we never, quote, get to give to others. And the truth is, you can survive that way, but you can't really thrive. When it comes to influencing others, when it comes to building a sense of being someone that others want to listen to and follow and interact with, you have to do both. You have to provide for yourself and have a sense of strength that you can stand on, but you also have to give to others. And you have to give to others without the expectation of return. That's what giving is. If you give to others because you want others to be influenced by you and follow you, that's manipulation. And that's not a loving spirit. But if you give to others without the expectation of it coming back to you and without the expectation of influence and building relationships, but instead just with the idea that you are giving because others need this from you and you have it and you can provide it out of abundance or out of sacrifice, and God is calling you to do this, and that response then turns around and actually creates influence, and maybe not directly with the person you're giving to either. See, sometimes the things that come back to us in the form of blessings when we give aren't monetary, and sometimes they aren't even directly from the people that we're giving to, but we are still blessed by giving. So you can recognize if you're emptying or filling your cup by that emotion, by the way that you're connected to others. You can recognize if you are emptying or filling your cup by paying attention to, are you just providing your needs? Are you providing your needs and your wants? Or are you trying to make your cup so big that your cup becomes your provider instead of God? And if you're doing that, then you're doing it wrong. And even if you're filling your cup, you're never going to let things overflow from that cup in that scenario. But if you try to make your cup too small, then what ends up happening is you haven't set good boundaries. And what happens is your cup will begin to develop leaks. And instead of being able to fill your cup and then from that full cup have abundance flow, you'll never be able to fill your cup because you'll constantly be emptying it because you'll give in a way that isn't healthy as well. So think about it. How big is your cup? And are you emptying it? Or are you filling it? Or are you filling it to an extent that it can overflow and provide for others in abundance and in love? Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor. Go over to facebook.com/inspired stewardship and like our Facebook page and mark it that you'd like to get notifications from us so that we can connect with you on Facebook and make sure that we're serving you to the best of our abilities with time and tips there. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.